Welcome to the History Makers, the show that brings you top personalities, great people who are making strides in their endeavors, music, entertainment, art, theater, fashion. And today I'm privileged to host one of the ladies who have done one of the biggest books, the fastest selling book in Kenya today, Deborah Tendo. Karibu, Deborah.
Thank you so much. Asante sana.
Tell me the journey of writing this book, Rough Silk.
Rough Silk. So, this is a memoir.
Yes.
It's a biography. It's basically, as it suggests,
Yes.
on the cover, the incredible story of a dad and daughter. So this is me writing about my father because we were raised by a single dad. And so the journey of writing this book is, the background is that my dad died of cancer back in 2016. And I thought that we lived a very incredible life, a very unique life. Most of the time you'll find that it's single mothers and their children, yeah?
Yes.
But in an African setup, to find a single dad and his children, that was unique in its own way. And so I decided the way to celebrate him is to write a book about him. And it's something that I wanted to do from probably 2016, but the journey of grief was not very easy on me. Anytime I said that I was going to write, it went on to the next year, and the next year, and the next year, until finally, in 2022, my husband really urged me, because he always kept on telling me, you need to write this book, you need to write it while it's still fresh. So in 2022, last year, I started writing in April, and it was quite a painful story that I started writing, and then I stopped. I stopped, I think, for about 2 months. That is, it went all the way May, June. I think I started again in June. I stopped. I went for therapy because writing is like revisiting. Writing a memoir is revisiting. It's opening the wounds. It's grief all over again. The things that you had not thought about, you had not reflected upon, they all come to the surface. And so I went for therapy, and then I went back again and started writing. And so as I continued writing, beautiful memories came. It was not only, I realized it was not only about the sad, the sad parts of life. Beautiful memories came, memories that made me laugh, memories that made me look back in wonder about the sheer beauty of the story. And so I went on and on and on and on until I finally finished in October, I remember. And then now I had to give it to the consultants, And, the moment you give your manuscript, it's like you have delivered a child. And I thought it was over. It was because it had been heavy lifting on my side, writing the book. And so when I gave it out, I was so relieved. I was like, oh, wow, it's over. Now I think I'm going to have a book. Only for the book to come back with so many issues. You need to do this, you need to do that, chapters, you need to, and
change it.
I know. And so it took me back, to start. And when the book came back, I was like, I can't. It was like starting again. It was like starting the pain again. And I said, no, I can't deal with this. And so November went without me writing. And then December, I was vacationing in Bali. Very beautiful place for writers.
Indonesia.
And yes. So I finished this book in Bali. So I can say I started writing this book in April, and I finished it in December.
Last year?
Yeah, last year.
So you say that this is a story of a single dad, an incredible single dad, and you've done a bit of heavy lifting in there. You've done heavy lifting on the 80s and 90s. What would you say are some of the highlights of your writing, and what made you write this book?
Well, first of all, I'm a reader. I'm a very ardent reader. I love books. And I really felt that anytime I go to the autobiography section of books, the only books we get are books to do with politicians, to do with the success story. You know, people who went to Harvard, people who, you know, won the gold, people who became the presidents. And yet, I feel that everybody has a story. And everybody has a story that can impact somebody else. I know you have a story. I've never met anyone and sat with anyone and just asked them randomly, so tell me about you. You'll always find there's a story that is worth people listening to. But a lot of people feel their stories are not worth it because they're not the president, they're not the prime minister, they're not the gold medalist, you know. Because out here, everybody wants to hear about success. But what about the ordinary? Because not all of us are going to become presidents. Not all of us are going to win gold in Olympics, you know. 90% of us are going to live the ordinary life, trying and failing, you know. So where are the books that have to do with people who tried and failed? People who tried, failed, tried again and succeeded. So for me, why I'm talking about it's the incredible story of a dad and daughter is being raised by him in the 80s and the 90s. This book starts in a very interesting way. First of all, my dad gets, we start in the rural area in the 50s when he's born. And I discussed the history of the Suba people because he was a Suba guy and his father was took part in the World War, came back to Suba and found that his land had been, they thought he had died, you know, and they subdivided his land. So when he came back, he found there was no land. So he had to move further into Migori to Sori, and while he was moving, his wife was pregnant. Yeah, basically he stayed in Suba for about 7-8 months, trying to tussle with his brothers. Yes. And when it was impossible, he decided to just move to Migori. So he's moving with his wife, who is Nyongalo, and then Nyongalo goes in labor at a tree called the Otho. When you look at this cover, you'll see a tree. Yes. Yeah, it's like it's that is where the story begins. So his mother gives birth to him and dies, you know, and this also takes care of the issue of the mortality rate and what it means, what childbirth means. So this is how the story begins, and so it's a very interesting story from the word go. It starts on 100 kilometers per hour. It's on
the footing is crazy.
It's crazy.
You are from India. You're from Burma.
Yeah.
You're in a world war.
Yes.
You come home, you find the land taken, their wife delivers, but she dies on the spot.
Yeah, she dies on the spot.
So you have a baby here in your hands.
Yes.
Are you sure you get land or not?
Yeah, so now they had a few cousins who were living in the Sori area, and of course they just gave him a portion. So this kid who is born is my dad now. So my dad was the last born to his mother because the mother died while having him. And so of course he goes to school, he goes to Homa Bay High School. He's a striker, he's at Homa Bay High School, plays football and all that. Then eventually, after finishing high school. In the 60s, when you finish high school, university was not such a big deal. You just took a bus and, you know, came to Nairobi and started to look for a job. So now this is what happens. When my dad is still in high school, 2 girls are betrothed to him. And so he marries.
The Luos of 80s used to marry in high school.
Can you believe that?
Even some Tesos I know used to, when you're going to high school, you leave your wife at home.
Imagine, so this guy is 16 years old.
Yes.
He already has 2 wives, you know? And these 2 wives already having children, you know?
When you go to high school, you're a big man.
You're a big man, you get married.
Yes.
So when he finishes high school, he already has a family,
yes,
you know? And so he arrives in Nairobi and he now realizes, oh my God.
There are beautiful women out here.
Oh my God, what's happening here? So
when the village had not seen women who had makeup and all this.
Yes,
and lipstick.
Yes.
He's shocked.
He's shocked. They're now going for Rumba. He's introduced into the Nairobi nightlife and whatnot. And he now meets my mother, you know? And you know, in Nairobi, it's unheard of. What are you talking about? You're only 20-something. What do you mean you have wives at home? So he doesn't tell my mother that. He has 2 wives at home. So they're dating and everything, and they get married in church.
Oh.
Yeah. They get married. What is the name of this church? It's at Jogoo Road. It's called
St. Stephen's.
No, it's not St. Stephen's. It was a Catholic church. It's a Catholic church. Is it Our Lady of Visitation? Something like that in Jogoro. They get married, you know, and then eventually the truth starts coming out, you
That
know.
this man is married.
Yes, the truth
Amacha
starts...
bibi nyumbani mbili.
The truth starts coming out, and when the truth is coming out, my mother has already had like my children. He's had now my brother. I mean, she has had my brother, and the marriage now starts taking a dip. Of course, because he has come to Nairobi, he now knows about rumba. He's drinking. He has this groupie friends and whatnot. These are things that are not conducive to marriage, and so his marriage breaks apart. When his marriage breaks apart, that is now how he becomes a single dad. This is how this book starts.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've really explained the background, the genesis of all this. But there's also a number of, in the 80s, there's a lot of rumba. There's a lot of sex in the 80s, and 90s.
Yeah.
A lot of sex.
Yeah.
And that's the birth of HIV/AIDS.
Oh my God.
Serious ravaging people.
Yes.
And there's one of the greatest Luo musicians, Okach Bigi, Jaujimbe. So how did all that play into his life?
It's interesting, Charles, because I have dedicated a whole chapter on the boys' club and another chapter on the pandemic. I think as a community, as Luos, we don't speak as loudly to do with the pandemic, the HIV pandemic, and what it did to the community. For us, the kids who were born in the 80s, everybody, every single one of us has a story to do with HIV. Because I think HIV came into Kenya. We were very young. I think it was towards mid-80s to late 80s. And then now the effects started coming up in the 90s now. Now, my dad, because he was a guy in the 80s, and I've told you about the rumba, there was also Okach Bigi. There was this club in Kisumu. I think it was called the Junction.
Junction Inn.
Junction Inn. And my dad had this group of friends, Odieksonga. I don't know whether you ever heard of that guy.
Odieksonga Wood Salome. Songi Wood Salome.
Yes.
The man who would eat 2 chicken alone. The man who would drink 2 big sodas, 2 1 liters. And by the way, the story is, there's a friend of mine called Dod Kenyatta. Dod Kenyatta is an ardent Gor Mahia fan.
Okay.
He tells me that the late Odieksonga was a heavy man. He was heavily built.
He was really huge, yes.
And he could dance. He really loved his dancing. And when Odiek would, at every 10 o'clock, he would order for his food ready for preparation. So at 11, he's eating his lunch. So he's had 2 chicken, 2 sodas. And if you try and get a bite, he tells you, go and look for your money.
Your own money.
Go make your money. If you don't have money, you cannot eat Odieksonga's food.
Yeah, that is true. He had a lot of money.
Yes.
I think he was a Kanu stalwart.
Yes,
which was very rare.
Man.
Yeah,
yes.
it was very, very rare.
Yeah.
And Odieksonga had a Peugeot 504, which was a big deal those days.
Yes.
So my dad and his group, they used to drive in this Peugeot 504 every Friday.
Yes.
They're driving
Junction Inn.
Yeah, they're driving to Junction Inn.
Yes.
They're going to dance to Okach Bigi, and the next morning they're coming back to Nairobi.
Yes.
So this lifestyle, you know, of first of all, there was the road carnage. A lot of them died on the highway. A lot of them died on the highway. I think in Lowland we call it Luothum.
Yes.
A lot of them died while doing that.
Yes.
And then now this lifestyle, there's definitely, as Luos, we are lifeists, you know, and there's music, there is sex, and there was a lot of HIV moving around in these clubs, a lot of it. And there's a famous one here at Safe in Nairobi. It was called Safe
House.
Safe House.
Yeah.
I think it was in
Huruma.
Yes. It was in Huruma.
Yeah.
And when Okach wasn't playing in Junction, he was playing at Safe House.
Yes.
Still the same thing. Lots of Luos in there, just dancing, a lot of reckless sexual behavior. And so when now we started looking at the 90s, 93 coming up, HIV now started getting into the community. A lot of people died.
Many people
A
died.
lot of people died. As children who were born in the 80s, a lot of us were left
As orphans.
And we don't talk about that because these kids were not able to go to school. A lot of them were distributed to relatives. You know, like when a mother dies, a father dies, if they were polygamists, the whole setup, all the 5 mothers die, and there's just nobody. So the homestead remains on its own, and children now have to be distributed. A lot of kids are not able to go to school. A lot of them, it was bad. So this affected the community, and it's something that needs to be talked about a lot. Secondly, HIV got into even the universities, because when you go to Okachbigi and Safe Life, it's everybody. We have the mechanics there, we have the professors, we have the doctors, we have all sorts of people. And when this disease is moving, you know, in the club, it's taking everybody in. And we had professors, of course, who are having affairs with students in the university. So they gave the students now gave each other, so it was really, really bad. I think in the 90s, anytime you're on the highway, it was just coffins moving into Nyanza, coffins moving into Nyanza, and we thank God the ARVs came to our rescue towards the end of the 90s, and I think that is something that needs to be talked about, and I've spoken about it a lot
in a chapter.
Yes,
the
I've
chapter
given
on
it
pandemic,
a whole chapter written
and the boys club. And I think Okachbigi single-handedly, as a musician, he's the only artist I know who, for a very long time, Carnival was not hosting traditional local artists. So one day they heard that Okachbigi always pulls a crowd, and the first person to ever, for the first time, he was called to perform in Carnival.
Really?
And he was packed.
Really?
So Okachbigi was a phenomenon, a major phenomenon in Luo culture and music.
Yes.
And remember, he also died with the disease.
Oh yeah, he did. I've actually written about it here.
Yes.
He came on stage, he was standing. Then eventually he came on stage sitting.
Yes.
Then eventually he was coughing.
Yeah.
Eventually his voice just
Disappeared.
And he even composed a song.
Yes, about
There's
it.
a song about it.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
So if you look at, you tackled about pandemic, you tackled about the traveling. What about Gor Mahia, the issues of Gor Mahia? Did you touch about Gor Mahia?
Of course. So when you're talking about Okachbigi and our fathers, it's a package. Gor Mahia is a package. It's in there.
Yes.
And I personally am a huge fan of Gor Mahia, and a lot of us, we have inherited Gor Mahia from our parents. When this book starts, I talk about the things that were so special to my father. One of them is rumba, another one is football. And of course we could not afford a television, and so we used to listen to football on a radio
Commentary.
Yeah, on the commentary.
Yes.
It was interesting. It was interesting now that I think about it. And so Gor Mahia then used to play, I think, at the City Stadium, if I recall.
They call it Toko Mwanda.
Yes, Toko Mwanda. And we were living in Umoja. And so they would pick themselves. They would actually come home, pick up dad, and they would go to Bama. They used to start, it was a package.
Yes, you have to eat at Bama first.
you start by...
What I've not understood is that you have to eat uji and mandazi.
Why?
Surely.
No, it's because after that you're expecting to run. Anything may happen. Anything may happen.
Yes.
So they're gonna go to cities to Bama. They're going to eat.
Yes.
After that, they get into the stadium.
Yeah.
That is when they were watching the live. I never once went for the live ones when I was a child, but I used to listen to it on the radio with him. But I know that they used to go and they would come back without shoes. You know, and I would wonder, why are you guys coming back without shoes? It's usually always because sometimes Gore is being defeated by the other
AFC Leopards.
by AFC Leopards. This guy called Odero Spoiler, he used to just get into the pitch,
yes,
and starts accosting the referee, and the next thing you know, there's stones inside the stadium, and people are running, and
helter skelter.
Most of their live matches never used to end. It used to end in running battles.
Yes.
Yeah, so I've really touched on Gor Mahia. I've tackled Gor Mahia from the days of my dad to my days. To the days of Carol Radul and Gidi when they were doing the Jazza Study program, to Sports Pesa coming into the league, to now where we are right now, where fans are again disillusioned because management issues in local football. Yeah, I've tackled
You've really tackled Gor at length.
Yes.
Then I can see a chapter you've tackled your journey, your personal journey. Your struggles in school and your struggles in identity. And also, towards the end, you really tackle your father's illness and why, and the closeness you have with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So of course, when the marriage disintegrates, he remains as the only parent. And for children, we only remember the present parent. Yeah. And so he loses his job. This reckless behavior, this going out to the club, having fun and whatnot, it doesn't end well for him, as it never ends well for everybody. And so, of course, we are the people who suffer these decisions. So, what happened is when their marriage ended, they were fighting for us as the children. So, my mother would send her sister. Mama Mpenzi is really covered in this book.
In this book, I've seen the photos.
She's a hero. So Mama Mpenzi would come and steal us, and we would be hidden out. And little by little, like a month or 2 months later, you'll find Dad has found out where we've been hidden out. He would come again and steal us, So we would be stolen. One moment we're with Mama Mpenzi, the next we're with Dad and all that, until it reached a point when everybody said, no, let these kids go to boarding. Yeah. And so actually I never went to primary or nursery. I never went to nursery or pre-unit because of this issue. Because when you're hidden out, you can't go to school, So I have written a very hilarious episode here, how I went to class 1. Mama Mpenzi just came home one day and found me playing by myself and asked me where the other children are. And I told her that everybody's in school. all my age mates are in school. Then it occurs to her, oh my God, she needs to go to school. Decides to take me to St. Anne's in Jogo Road, St. Anne's Girls Primary. So we reach there, we find the headmistress, who is shocked, like, what? This kid has never gone to school, not even nursery, nothing, And she was about to reject me. But she didn't know that I had been learning from these other children when they come from school how to count 1, 2, 3, 4, how to do the ABCD, FGH. And so when I saw that she was going to reject me, I started counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, ABCD. I started singing to her. Hello, teacher. I'm so happy to see you. She felt so. It was so heartfelt that she said, "Okay, let's have her. If she's not strong, she's going to just repeat class 1 until the day she'll catch up with everybody else." Luckily, I've never repeated a class. So anyway, I went to boarding school. I went to Mukumu Girls Primary Boarding School. That's now how I interact with Odiexonga. Mukumu Girls Primary School is in Kakamega. So for you to reach Kakamega, you have to pass by Kisumu. So we hiked Odiexonga's car. They were going to see, what's his name, Okachbigi, but they had to take me to school, to Mukumu, to do the interview, and then now they came back to Kisumu to dance. So I spent a whole journey with these guys, Odiexonga, Abongo Jakoyugi, Nyamson area, all these guys. I spent, they're the ones who took me for this. So I went to Mukumu Girls Primary, of course, and Dad was struggling. He didn't have a job and all that. I struggled through primary. Luckily enough, it was a Catholic school, and they're not as brutal as to, you know, tell kids to go back home because of school fees. So they always just endured me, and it also helped that I was always top in class. So it was so bad that there were some closing days when I never went home. People closed school.
Lack of money.
Yeah. Lack of basic things like just transport, you know. So kids are taken on closing day. I have to remain in school because nobody has come to pick me, you know, and I have to live with the nuns. You know, I'm very close to those nuns. Yeah, so I struggled through primary school. My mother never showed up, you know. I think when the marriage disintegrated, she was really traumatized with everything that happened. The details of it is in the book. I don't want to tell the public so that they can buy the book to find out what actually, what scarred her that much that she just forgot about the children, you know. It's in the book. So I struggled through primary until I finished. And I was so lucky when I sat my KCPE. I was called to both Alliance High School and Moi Girls High School Eldoret. It was quite something. It was quite something. When those calling letters came, my dad could not believe it with everything that I had gone through as a child. Yeah, but it was a moment also of it was a scary moment because if you are struggling with school fees like 5,000, 6,000, if you are struggling even with fare, how are you going to afford going to Alliance or going to Moi Girls High School? It was, you know, and I immediately realized that I don't think we are going to make it here. And the lucky thing is when I was leaving Mukumu Girls Primary, then the headmistress, the nun, she was called Sister Joycelyn Mukolwe. She told me, you go, and then when it's difficult to go to high school, come back. We'll take you to Mukumu Girls High School and we'll just sponsor you fully. I was always top 3. They knew I was going to pass the exam. So now we reached a point where I'm looking at Alliance and Moi Girls. And Kibaki had not yet been president, so there was still no subsidized high school fees.
No free.
There was no free education. Let me tell you, those schools were expensive. They were really expensive that if you didn't come from a rich family, it was difficult for you to get into those schools. And so I told my dad, I don't think we are going to make it here. I think let's take the option of Mukumu Girls Primary. Do you know what my dad did? He walked with my calling letter in the streets of Nairobi.
Bunge la Mwananchi.
It's called City Hall.
Yes, where those Luos sitting.
Ambassador, there was ambassador.
They always sit around ambassador. They converge. Many people.
Yeah. They were always talking about Raila. Every day when they were speaking about Raila, about Ford, about all these things, at the end of these discussions, he used to pass this calling letter telling them, you guys, my kid has been called to a national school. Please help me. And you know, people kept on, changaing for him and whatnot, you know, until eventually we realized I could not go to Alliance. Alliance was probably more expensive by around 80,000, if I remember. And so I ended up going to Moi Girls High School Eldoret. Yeah. So it's interesting actually that I was the first person in my family to ever step into a national school. And this was being told to everybody. And at that point, my mother appeared. I had not seen her for such a long time. She appeared and she offered to take me to high school. And unfortunately, I was already getting into my teens. And I had a lot of questions. I was growing up.
You're asking, where have you been?
Yeah.
Where are you appearing now? Where have you left us? Many questions.
Many questions.
Yeah.
It was a very polarized relationship. It was a very hurtful relationship. We struggled. We really struggled. We really struggled to the point that when he left Moi Girls, after admitting me, when he left Moi Girls, he never came back again. Never. Because I asked her a question that was painful for her. It's in the book, you know, and she never came back. Yeah, she never came back. And I really struggled with identity all through high school. And you know, the interesting thing is, from the time that our mother left to now high school, my dad remarried. He married this very, very wonderful lady. In this book, I describe her as Nyasamia. She was amazing. She really took care of us. She really took care of us. And when she went, actually, that is when our life became so bad that we were auctioned. We went to live in a slum. And that is when even Dad would not even pick me from school because where am I going to? You know, it was probably his way of protecting me. And so I was talking about now my mom when now she came back, how the relationship was really polarizing for both of us, and she never came back. So of course I was struggling with identity all of high school. I was a very problematic child, and I have really heartfelt given teachers, my teachers. I've given my teachers a lot of praise for being the people who really stood by me. One, Mr. Bet, he really, he kept on counseling me, you know, kept on counseling me about the problems that I was going through, asking myself why our mother, you know, left. Weren't we worth it? You know, all those kind of things. You struggle with them as a child.